And we are live. Hello, friends. As you can see, I am not in my office. I am at a park and I'm plugged in. That's going to be our background today. Let me grab this URL here. I do not and look at the chat at all. So feel free to try and chat there. I will never see it. If you want to participate via chat, then you can come to the Discord, and this is where we do that. You can go to my Office Hours page on my site and find links to all the places and stuff and how to participate, whatever. So let me just add recording live stream is here. Yeah, so the way that this works is I answer your questions. I'm going to do let me just say this. I have something really exciting that I'm working on as another mechanism to answer people's questions. And it's well suited for anything that can be answered over audio. So it's basically a podcast where you can record your question in the browser, and then I record my response in the browser, and then my server slaps those together and sticks it on a podcast. And so if you would be interested in helping me queue this up with a bunch of episodes. I'm not going to give you the link to the podcast yet because there aren't any actual episodes on it. But I want to get some episodes on it so I can put it on Apple Music and stuff before we officially announce it. So if you want to help me and you have any like genuine question that you feel like can be answered over audio only, and you want to be one of the first episodes of this new podcast, then let me know. You can come into the KCD Office Hours, scroll up a bit, and unarchiving. I'm going to unarchive that, and you can or actually you could just raise your hand on here, or just mention in here, I have a question, how do I do this? And I will start a private thread with you to explain to you how to do this. And you can be one of the first episodes on what will be probably a awesome podcast, hopefully. Okay, so enough of that. If you have a question that you don't want to ask on the podcast and you'd like to ask now, then feel free to do so. I give priority to people who are in the Zoom call. So yeah, and then when we run out of questions in Zoom, then I'll scroll up and we've got a couple up here that I can answer as well. So who has questions in the Zoom call?
Oh, wow, this is great. Oh, this is a great opportunity to meet you, Ken. Thank you so much. So I've got a question.
Are you Tom, like this Tom?
Tom Spencer. Yeah.
So different Tom, not this Tom.
Yeah, I've got a park.
That's me, that one.
Oh, okay. Hi, Tom. Go ahead, Tom Spencer.
I've got a park tennis ladder, which I've been working on. Would it be convenient to show you that? Or
yes, sure.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so I have to. Okay, that will be a bit of a challenge because I need to log off and then log on a different computer because I've got it open on a different computer. So I'll go back in the queue. But
okay. Yeah, we'll definitely have time for you. I'll go over to the other Tom. Cool. Thanks, Tom Spencer. All right, Tom. So I'm guessing you want to know, you want to dive into this a little bit more. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let me just refresh myself on this. So we were talking about it wasn't conditional hooks. This is, you wanted to make a function that returned a hook and then pass that hook as a prop. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Cool. So, and you made a little minimal reproduction. I haven't looked at it yet. Well, I opened it and I breezed over it really quick. But yeah, let's see.
I didn't expect you
to. Okay, yeah, let me take a look at this and we can dive into it a bit. Wow, that's fun. Thanks. We'll move away from this. Yes, I'm sure it's fine. So am I looking at the app file? Is that where I should be hanging out?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's some comments online from line 47 to 62 in app.js.
Okay.
And then in with used sync state.js, there's some comments in there. Those are the real, I mean, the ones in with used sync state, those are the questions that I'm really trying to get the answer to. You know what I mean?
Got it. Okay, so here in the app, we've got a couple of providers with some state values. We've got these items to render. Okay, and then we iterate over those to render these different component. Okay, so component to render. Oh, okay, we grabbed that from this component use with sync state. Okay, got it. So this with use sync state is a higher order component that is taking this one, making a new one, and then we've got our component and another component. Got it. Okay, we have the key. We pass along the ID. Okay, so let's take a look at this with use sync state. Boy, higher order components. Man, I haven't used one of those in a while. Okay, so
yeah, it was the only way I could figure to get to be able to memoize this hook that I had just created.
okay.
And pass it in as a prop.
Oh yeah, okay, because you don't want to have to do that everywhere where you're going to be creating this component, but you have to do it within a component. You can't do it within another hook or something.
Exactly, yeah, and
right.
in that, the only place that I could memorize it, apart from using a higher order component, that I could figure was inside that map function, which you can't do obviously because you're not supposed to use hooks in there.
Right. Yeah, it needs to be called during the render phase. Well, oh, right, because you want to memoize it, right? Because
Yeah,
otherwise,
so I couldn't use memo or use callback in that map function.
And the reason we need to memoize it is I seem to remember talking about this. If you don't memoize it, then like any of the variables or functions within the hook would be recreated every render.
It's not so much that, it's actually the fact that that component to render on line 65 of app.js is there's like dozens of components that could be. It's choosing from in the actual app, it's choosing from a large array of components, and some of those are very expensive to render. So some of them are wrapped in React.memo. And if I don't memorize the hook that I'm passing in, then React Memo doesn't do it.
Yep, that makes total sense. Okay. Yeah, wow, tricky. So use sync state. So let's see. Well, you said most of your comments are in here.
That's right.
There's not. Yeah, there's. I mean, there is. Hold on a second. So use sync state accepts props, access key and value. But here you're passing this props.id to the. Let's figure out what this thing does. Hold on, really quick.
Yes.
Okay, so it gets the context key, returns a function that accepts the value and access key. Okay, so when you say, is it any different from using use callback? In this case, you're not using this apply context location thing. You're actually closing over the props ID and passing that directly. There's not really, from what I can tell, it doesn't look like there's any difference between use memo and use callback here. Fundamentally the difference is, there's no difference. Hold on a second. Yeah, foundationally, I don't believe that there's any difference. So is use memo approach doing something wrong? Not.
Yeah, the main point is that the use callback, ESLint complains and says, your callback function can't call a hook, which it is calling. But use memo doesn't complain that way because it's not calling a hook directly. It's using this apply context to location. It's creating this new function which calls a hook and then memoizing it.
So you're sidestepping.
I'm trying to figure out.
You're taking advantage of the limitations of ESLint and static code analysis. So because ESLint can't see that this actually ends up returning a hook or calling a hook, it can't tell you that, hey, this is a bad idea, like the use callback can. And I would say that it is a bad idea, not because what you're doing is going to cause problems, but because when it would be easy to break something if somebody were to come back in and they didn't know what they were doing. So yeah, like, let me think of a situation where they could break something. I think actually you've got some pretty good safeguards here, because these are technically hooks, and so you're going to get linting warnings for like doing things conditionally. Yeah, like you would use an actual hook, so you get a lint warning if you don't include your actual dependencies. Yeah, I think you'd probably be okay.
No,
I mean, you'll want to
I
keep
had
in mind that that the hook that you're passing to Usync State could only be used within a component that is a function component, and you don't have any way to enforce that here. Now, if your app is 100% function components, then you're fine. But if you have any potential of this component being a class component, you have, I mean, there are ways to determine that. So you could do like a runtime check and give a warning, and that is a helpful error message. Yeah, I think it's probably fine. It's just, like I said earlier, it's quite odd. I would only recommend doing this if you are trying to maintain backward compatibility with a lot of code. If you're creating a new abstraction that works this way, I would definitely avoid, or I would try to build it differently. So the only time I would say that this is fine is if it's like a temporary solution for backward compatibility purposes, just because it's pretty odd.
Yeah, that actually is what it's being used. That's why it's being used that way. So that's cool. Here's one quick question then. On line 23 of with used.
Am I sharing my? Sorry to interrupt. Am I sharing my screen? I totally forgot.
No,
I'm not sharing my screen. Gosh dang it. Sorry about that. So like all this time I've been looking at stuff and sorry.
I thought it was
all right here because I'm looking at it on my own screen. Apologies.
All right, this is it. You can find it in the Discord, and hopefully you looked at it too. It's great. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to ask on line 26 there. Sorry, line 20. Where is it? Okay, so let's say line 11 and also line 23, but let's look at line 11. Let's say the thing that's being returned from use memo. I'm putting it in a, I'm naming it Usync State memo. So it starts with the word use. My understanding is that ESLint is going to see that as a hook because it starts with the word use. Correct? Yep. Yeah, okay, just wanted to check that, that's all. So in theory, because I'm passing that in as a prop and so on, ESLint should still be able to tell there's a hook.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter to ESLint that this is prefixed as use, as the variable use here, unless you were to like call it here, then it could give you a warning right here and say, oh, you're using this conditionally. But because you're not actually calling it here, it doesn't actually need to be called use. And in fact, it doesn't need to be given a name at all. You could do this as well if you wanted to, because you're not actually calling that function. I would leave it the way that it is, but I think it's important to understand what the convention is for. And I think some people mistakenly think that JavaScript cares what that variable is called, and it really it only matters for ESLint. I think you understand that, but just in case.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. All right, Tom, are you ready? The other Tom, sorry, Tom Spencer, are you ready to share? You're muted right now.
Can I share screen? Am I allowed? Yeah. Okay, that's great. And again, this is absolutely outstanding. So fantastic to speak with you because I love the course yeah, really, really interesting. And I like the way that you write the stuff down so that we can actually learn through exercises. So I've been doing some of the exercises with other people. So this is a park tennis ladder. And so I'll definitely be bothering you as much as possible on these office things. Now, this is an odd bug.
Sorry, tell me what is a tennis ladder? I don't know what a tennis ladder is.
This is my friend's business idea. I'm not sure if it's a good one. He thinks he's going to make millions of pounds from selling a park tennis ladder. So a tennis ladder is like a ladder, exactly. So where people kind of pay a subscription, and they can then join up and be in a tennis ladder, which is like 1 to 10 in the ladder, and you might have a ladder in different locations, and then he's gonna
Is a ladder like a team or something, or a league?
Yes, a league, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm not into tennis, so I've never heard of a tennis ladder before.
Cool.
Cool.
So that's the idea. So I've started doing some work with him, and it has helped a little bit because I've been doing Java usually, but this is JavaScript. So really enjoying working on this with him. He's a nice guy. And I've done some stuff with just moving some of the routes. But I found a little odd bug, which might happen or might not, where it shows
actually really quick. Can you tell me, is this in Create React app? Is it server rendered with Next or Remix or
Next.js?
Next.js, okay.
Yeah. So this page shows an error sometimes. So it's a little bit of a nondescript error. I'm not sure if I can reproduce it.
I may not be able to help because I haven't used Next.js in a long time.
Okay.
So I'll just preface things with that. I'm using Remix these days.
Okay, so that is the ladders. So I'm not very much of an expert myself, unfortunately. That is ladders, and that is perhaps ladders find. Would it be ladders? This would be ladders index.
This would be an index, yeah.
Yeah. So this is ladders index, and I have this awful bit of code that I've written, which is user ID. Getting the auth ID, and I think possibly that is causing this intermittent error, which causes it to show an error instead of showing the ladders on this page.
So are you currently logged in? So your user ID should be a value?
Yes, but sometimes it would show, I suppose it would be null. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
In which case your user ID defaults to 1. Does your backend respond to user ID of 1?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does because it's got the
Actually, let me ask you this. Should unauthenticated users ever get to this page?
Yes.
Okay.
No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't, ideally.
Okay. So in that case, I wonder I wonder why you are checking whether the user is authenticated if they shouldn't be able to get to this page if they're not.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So, all right then. I think what I was thinking of something a bit similar to this kind of thing with this if error and if loading, because obviously there's some asynchronicity for getting the auth. And
I see. So when this is server rendered, you're not actually you're server rendering the loading state.
I believe so.
The authentication's happening on the client.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think that's correct.
Nice. That makes sense. And is use query, is that a React query?
Yes, I believe so. I think so.
So what I would suggest is, and this may be causing the problem, possibly. What I would suggest is using the enabled property of use query, where you say the query is not enabled if the user is not authenticated or if the user hasn't loaded yet. I believe that will set the loading state to false, and the idle, or I can't remember what it does to the state. But you may need to just handle that specially, and you just say if it's loading or if it's idle or not enabled, then just return the loading state. It's possible that's causing your problem. Is there
Yeah,
a reason that the authentication is happening all client side rather than having having that happen server side?
No, I mean, I've only just started work. This is the auth provider, I suppose.
Mhm.
This is the auth context.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely. I think it is client side, isn't it? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's all right. So you'll find it is, oh man. Okay, I'm going to not get into why Remix is so great.
Remix.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, because I really don't want to tell you to switch to Remix. You're already using Next. A lot of people have a lot of great success with Next. I'm afraid that I'm really limited on how much I can help you with Next, just because I have limited experience with it. I could tell you exactly what to do if you're using Remix. And it would just be so nice. Like, I'm seeing these loading states and error states, and I'm like, oh man, Remix makes this so much easier.
Okay, cool. Okay.
But yeah, like I said, I would, I don't want to tell you to switch to Remix. If you're happy with Next, keep using Next. But yeah, like what I would say is, because your authentication is happening, well, I mean, first off, see if you're early on and you can switch to make your authentication server renderable, then do that, because you don't want to just, show the user a loading screen on every page. Like, you lose most of the benefits of server rendering if you just show them a loading screen as soon as they get to the page. So see if you can make it authentication work on the server. That'll require like cookies and stuff and sessions. Well, not necessarily, but that's how I do it, and I find it works nicely. Some people like to use JOTs for everything, which yeah, actually, I don't think you can make server rendering work with JOTs on the initial document load, because with JOTs, you typically have to have some client-side code that sends the JOT along as a header with the request, and you can't do that for a document request. So anyway, probably want to use cookies. But yeah, so if you can, that's great. If not, then double check that your backend handles that default user ID properly. And if it doesn't, then yeah, if it doesn't, then you can switch the enabled to false until that user is loaded. And that way you don't actually submit the query until the user is ready to go. And actually, I would probably, even if your backend does handle the default state, because you don't care about the data that comes back anyway, like you're waiting for the user to load, I wouldn't bother making that query until the user's ready. And so I would set enabled to false on that until the user's ready to go.
That's really helpful. Use
So
query.
that might be causing your problem. It's hard to know what your problem is without seeing it, but
yeah, exactly.
That's one problem that I can see right away. That could be the issue.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I couldn't read.
And actually, if you do end up doing client side for your authentication, you stick with that. Your layout component could, like, I guess you could have an authenticated layout component and then a regular layout component or something. And the authenticated one will just show a loading state until the user's data has finished loading before rendering its children. You can look at, when you were talking about my course, you're referring to Epic React, right?
Yeah, and the React testing, actually. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So in the bookshelf app that we build, this is what I do. And so you can go look at the authentication exercise for the bookshelf app. Because what we do is we render the auth provider, and the auth provider doesn't render its children until the authentication state is loaded, because it wouldn't make any sense for the children to not have access to the auth state anyway. And so that way you can avoid having to render a loading state for every single page that is an authenticated page. You just render a loading state in the auth provider. Oh shoot, I just ripped my cord. Dang it. That's too bad. Yeah. That way, all of the components that use the auth layout don't have to worry about whether the authentication state is ready. They just assume that it is, because it will be, because they can't be rendered unless it is. That would simplify things a great deal. But again, it would simplify it even further if you can do all authentication on the server. And so you server render the authenticated state. And then that's way better for your users too. So they don't have to get a face full of loading states and loading centers and stuff. So
that is really helpful. Thank you.
And then
so much.
if you have like an outrageous amount of time on this and you're like super excited about learning stuff and whatever, then give Remix a really solid look, because Remix is the bomb. And I'm not going to go into it because every one of my office hours ends up being like a big rant on why I love Remix so much. So if you want that, then feel free to look at past office hours. But yeah, anyway, that would be something to look at.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing, Tom. Good luck on this. It's fun to build stuff. All right, who's next? And if there's nobody in the Zoom who has a question, I can always go back to the Discord.
I can ask a question.
All right, Brandon, what's up?
Okay, so I have a couple of different app ideas that I want to work on, but I'd like to minimize the number of components and reuse the components in different projects. I've seen this. I've seen something called Bit or Bitly. I forget the exact name. I played with it a while back. Do you have any experience with that, or how would you recommend dealing with this problem of component reusage in between different projects?
Yeah, actually, Brandon, do you mind if I message you? Because this is a great question for this new thing that I'm doing. It's a podcast where I answer questions. And I need a first episode. I need a couple episodes before I actually release it and stuff. Would you mind if I message you about that and you can ask it there?
Totally. And also, like, this is my first office hours and I haven't watched a whole lot, so this also might not be the right.
No, this is the exact place to ask that sort of question. Except I'm adding another thing that I'm doing where this would be an even better. Or it would be an even better place for this kind of question. So yeah, in the Discord, just scroll up here and message me right in here. That way I can find you, and I'll shoot you a message after office hours is done.
Perfect.
And don't worry, everybody, you'll be able to get this podcast soon, like in the next couple weeks. I just want to fill it up with a bunch of episodes so I can get it on Apple Music and stuff before I actually announce it. So
sweet. Yeah, I'll message you on Discord. I'll log in.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much. Vante, I saw you were unmuted for a second. Did you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question today. I'm just here to listen.
Cool. Yeah. Good to see you. Okay, I'll just head over to Discord. Feel free to interrupt me, everybody, if you have a question. I always give priority to the folks who are actually in the Zoom. And Peter, I do see your question. I'll get to yours here in a second. Let me just see. Okay, so Damien asked a question. When developing a chat app, should we use something like WebSockets, or is it totally fine to use Refetch query once a second? Okay, this is a great question. And it would actually be a really good question for this something new thing that I'm doing that I asked Brandon to ask. Yeah, that's okay. I don't see Damien here. So yeah, if you're building a chat app, I think WebSockets are what you want for sure. Here's the big challenge with WebSockets. They are extremely difficult to scale. So the problem, I mean, if you've got a pretty small app, maybe a couple hundred users or something, then yeah, you can have one server that handles all of those socket connections and everything's fine. But as soon as you start scaling that to thousands of users, then your server is going to have a really hard time letting every user know about the changes that that are relevant to them, and keeping those WebSockets up. I haven't done any research on how many exactly a typical server can handle, but I know that there are scaling problems with this. And actually, I should preface all of this by saying I've never built my own WebSocket solution, but I've talked to a lot of people who have encountered this problem, and they tell me that it has a scaling, or that it's very difficult to scale. This is actually one of the earliest memories I have in building websites, was talking with my coworkers at Domo about our chat solution. And I think they ended up getting a paid provider solution rather than building it themselves, just because it was really difficult. So all of that said, yeah, let me actually first address like refetch query once a second. This will also be a big problem. In fact, it may even be a worse problem from a scale perspective, because with a WebSocket, you just keep the socket open. I'm not sure how expensive that is, but I have a feeling that it's more expensive than having like hundreds of requests coming at you every second. In addition to all of the regular requests that you're handling as people are navigating around, you're getting hundreds and maybe thousands of requests every second to your server, saying, hey, do you have any more stuff for me? And so, yeah, I would venture to say that refetching every second would not only be worse for the user experience because they're waiting a full second, but also be a real drag on the scalability of your server as well. So I probably wouldn't go with that solution. Probably want to go with WebSockets, but again, really hard to build that yourself. And so if I were building a chat app today, I might try Firebase. Firebase is great, and that's like their canonical example. Like that was the thing that demoed super well for everybody. Three-way data binding, like all this stuff back in the day when Firebase was getting. I was a community advocate. We called ourselves torches. I was the first torch for Firebase, which is kind of fun. It was basically like their Google developer expert before they were bought by Google. I was the first one. And yeah, I haven't done a whole lot with Firebase for years, but this is probably the first one first thing I would look at. I would also look at Pusher, which is more of a general purpose WebSocket solution. So yeah, like Firebase is kind of like, here's your data, you can subscribe to your data, and we'll just let you know when that data changes. Whereas Pusher is like, we're a level below that where you can just use us for WebSockets, and then you have whatever for that. Yeah, Vontae, what's up?
So you said Firebase. Would you like? Isn't there Superbase too? That's kind of like built off of Firebase.
Yeah,
it's kind of like newer.
It is. I did evaluate this. Yeah, this would actually be another one to look at. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to grab links to all of this and hit reply, and we'll just send all these Damien's way. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I said, I've never used Superbase before, but I'm guessing, because they say they're a Firebase alternative, I'm guessing they also have, yeah, real-time subscriptions. So that would be another option for sure. And actually, if I were building something today, I would probably try, like building a chat app today, I'd probably try Superbase, in part because they're based on Postgres, and I've fallen in love with Postgres. It's awesome. And I already do have a Postgres database that like maybe I could connect it to that one. I don't know.
Why do you say that about Postgres? What do you like about it?
So it's not so much Postgres as it is Prisma.
Oh, okay.
And Prisma is just so great. Oh my goodness, I am just blown away by how easy it is to like create my models, update my Postgres schema to match that. Boy, their website is not going fast right now. And then query and update all the TypeScript support. Man, it's just, Prisma is phenomenal. So I guess it's not so much Postgres that I'm excited about as it is Prisma. But yeah, Postgres, here's the other thing I love about Postgres. Whoops, let's do just their site. I love that I can create a Postgres cluster with Fly.io. So I have 5 instances of my database all over the world, so that right next to my instances of my app that are running all over the world, so that my app is like lightning fast everywhere. None of them have to go do a read to some region in US East 1 or whatever it is for Amazon. None of them have to do that. It's all distributed. Now, I know that Amazon has this way to do this too, and whatever. I forget what their services are called, but AWS freaks me out like nobody's business. I've done it before, and even just setting up an S3 bucket was just hard. I don't want to do that anymore. So anyway, I really like Postgres because Fly lets me deploy it all over the place. Prisma lets me interact with it really super awesomely. And so for that reason, Supabase seems pretty interesting because I can use Postgres, which I'm using these other 2 things with. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, thanks for the question, Damien. Okay, sweet. Moving on. Wahid, hopefully I'm saying that name correctly. Yeah, JavaScript mocking fundamentals. Let's see if I've got that. Let's get that open here. So I'm at the same spot. Ensure functions are called correctly with JavaScript mocks section. When I run my tests, I'm getting test and just function undefined. So Wahid, let me just say, answering your question now, because I don't think that they know how this works. So I'll just post that there. So let me see. Nope, not mocks. Let's go with mock function. Yeah, I think this is probably the one. So we've got mock function here. See, testing JavaScript is not workshop format, not yet anyway. So it's hard for me to know exactly which exercise they're talking about, but or which video they're talking about, but I'm guessing they are talking about, yeah, right here. So we've got test and jest function, and you're getting that those 2 values are undefined. My guess is that you're trying to run it with node. So you're saying node source tests mock function. And so you are going to get tests undefined. You'll also get just function as undefined. If we were to move that up here, then you'll get that as well, or just is undefined. That's my guess is what's going on here. So the way that you're supposed to run this, and again, because it's not workshop centered, it's not like exercises that you do. The intent of testingjavascript.com, it's not that you follow along, but that you watch the video, take notes, and apply what you learned to your own code. Eventually, we'll be workshop focused or based or whatever. And when we do that, then you'll have exercises that you can complete. But if you do want to run it yourself, then what you want to do is npm run test, or yeah, test watch, test colon watch. And so now here we're running things and everything's running properly. So that, I'm guessing that's what was going on for you, because if you're running things with jest, you absolutely should have test defined and jest function defined as well. So yeah, if that's not happening, then I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, cool. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, Peter's asking about the solar roof. Hey, Peter, this is actually a great question to ask in the Call Kent podcast thing. So if you wanted to, you could take that over there. Let me know if you don't want to, and I can answer you in text here. But yeah, this would be a really good one for the, and it probably wouldn't be my first episode, but it could be one of the first couple episodes on that podcast. That would be cool if you want to ask there. Okay, so I have a main component inside. There are some remote. I'll just answer you really quick. It's great, but it's not on yet. But I can elaborate in my answer. Okay, main component inside there are some remote components like Office Select that fetches data asynchronously on mount using Axios. Every time I test main component, I get act warning. Da, 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 da. Okay, common question. So yeah, let me think. It depends on so many things. There are lots of ways to solve this problem. So one way to solve this problem is, actually, you know what? Lewis, are you around? You're not in the Zoom. Lewis, I'm going to ask you really quick if you wouldn't mind pinging me right here and saying that you'd be willing to add this as a question on the podcast too. If you don't respond in the next couple minutes, then I'll just answer your question straight up. But if you would, I would love to answer this on the podcast thing that I'm doing, if you'd be interested in doing that. So let me know, and I'll come back to this if I don't hear back. Okay, similar question along the lines of Bitly. Yeah, you'll hear, Tom, you'll get that answer on the podcast thing. And it is bitdev. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. I've used Supabase for demo and RTC. Works great. Their authentication is simple. Love Postgres. Yeah, cool. That's good. Act warnings are killing me. Okay, so I'll just give you, this is not the answer to the question from Luis, but if you want to get a quick idea of what is the act warning and how do I fix it generally, give that a read. Sweet, Luis. So would you be cool with doing that? I'll ping you a message after we're done here to tell you how to ask your question on that podcast thing. Yeah, then we can get that answered there and it'd be great. Nick, I'm also looking forward to my talk. I'm also terrified about traveling. So here's the thing. CDC, travel, COVID. So right now, nope, wrong page. Right now, it's this one. United Kingdom. Oh, no, this is also the wrong page. Where is this? No, dang it. Travel level 4, United Kingdom. Let's see that. Yeah, okay. This is sort of where I want to be. Yeah, so the United Kingdom is currently at level 4 for COVID. I am vaccinated, was vaccinated months ago. So I'm not worried about getting the vaccine or the virus. Sure, maybe I'll get Delta. I'm not going to get hospitalized or anything. So I'm not worried about that, my health and safety, whatever. What I'm worried about is that I'll get there, I'll contract COVID, and I won't be able to get on the plane home. That's what I'm freaked out about. And so, or I'll get there and then the US will be like, you know what, this is stupid. We're closing down the borders. Nobody can get in and I won't be able to get home. Maybe that's an irrational fear that I have, but this has been my fear of travel, especially internationally, my entire life. So before COVID was a thing, I was always worried that something would happen that would prevent me from making it home. That is just like my biggest, maybe irrational fear. And so I might not actually make it to the UK for React Advanced London in person if they can't get from a very high level down to a level 3. So I am going to Croatia next week. I'm leaving on Sunday and I am pretty nervous about that also, but they're at a level 3. So yeah, I don't know, this COVID thing. I mean, I got the vaccine. I wish that everybody would do that, but it is what it is. So I hope to see you there, Nick. That would be great. Okay, sweet. Thank you, Brandon, for that message. I'll send you a message here. Luis, you should be able to get to the podcast. If you're not, then I will answer your question, especially just for you, separately. Yeah, here, let me stop sharing my screen really quick and I'll just message Luis privately. And then if you can't get on, let's see, then you can just message me here and I'll answer it right now. But I really could appreciate people with their help on this because this is something new I'm doing and I'm excited to do it. So, Um, okay, and I'm gonna CC Luis. Oh, that's Nick. Sorry, Luis. There we go. Nope, that's Lucy. My goodness. Luis. There we go. And Brandon. And this is a private thread. There we go. Okay, sweet. So let me know, Luis, if you can't get that to work. It is possible. I do have a bug right now, and it's possible you won't be able to outside of the US. I just realized. But in Cuba, I think you should be. I think it should work. So anyway, let me know if it doesn't work, and I'll just answer your question. Yeah, I plan on having that bug fixed today in the next little bit. But regional deployments, boy, it makes things really fast, but it also complicates things to a high degree as well. Okay, anyway, yeah, it is pain, big pain. Yeah, and in the US, here's the funny thing is that we're at a level, so you're at a level 4 for the UK. United States. Oh yeah, of course we wouldn't be on here. We're also a level 4 in the US, but the difference is the US is my home. So I'm not necessarily safer from COVID in the US, but at least I'm home. Okay. Welcome to the stage. Well, that's nice. Nick, appreciate that. I actually was thinking about it yesterday, and I would almost be willing to drop like $15,000 to charter a private jet to get home if that's what it took, because that is how much I don't want to be stuck in a country. My wife was like, maybe don't do that. But I just do not want to be stuck away from home. Even in the US, I wouldn't want to be stuck away from home, but especially outside. I just, in a foreign country, I wouldn't want to be stuck away from home. I'm just scared. Okay, Monte, I noticed your hand was up. Did you have a question or comment or something?
Oh, yeah. So how do you be finding out about all these like technologies like Fly, IO, and things? Do you kind of like run into a problem and then see what the solutions are, or like people tell you about them and then you kind of explore more and see what you like, or how do you discover all this stuff?
Monte, that's a great question. Would you be willing to ask that on the podcast thing?
Absolutely.
Sweet. Why don't you just add a message right here so I know which user to mention, and I'll include you on this thing as well. That's a great question, and I'd love to answer that on the podcast.
Sure.
I'm sorry everybody who came to Office Hours to learn something, and now they're just hearing about this podcast thing that they're gonna have to wait for. But this is actually a big help for me, so thank you. Okay, love some help potentially digging through this. Oh yeah, Aaron. And you're on the Zoom call right now? I don't see you. You must have jumped off.
No, I'm here.
Oh, that's weird. I just don't see you. Oh no, there are multiple pages now. There are enough people. There you are. Okay, the descendants thing. I don't know how much I can help you with this. I think I'd need to spend a fair amount of time digging on this myself. But I will try. Do you want to share your screen with me? You can take me on a tour.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, go for that.
Let's see here. Can you see?
I can.
All right, great. So, yeah, I guess I will sort of explain what the bug is and then maybe some context around it so that it'll be easier to wrap your head around.
Thanks.
Let's see here. I think custom. Okay.
Sorry, I'm like right next to the police station, so sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks, so I'm gonna have to just read through. Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Okay, this is it. Okay, So there's this hook called useDescendant. I guess I should explain what this code does first in terms of like why you would want to use it. So actually Reach UI implements this package. And so effectively you get this like custom context, and you can register elements into it. So for example, if you have like a list and you want to register all of the items in that list so that you could
I did something
potentially
just
like
like this in Downshift, actually. So I'm familiar with this use case where when you register, or when you're rendering the items, we need to register those items with the parent context so that it knows when the user like mouse down or keyboard down and then hit enter, we know which item is selected.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. So now here there's this function called useDescendants, and effectively there's this use effect, and the use effect says if the element is null, then we just bail. But if it's there, then we register it, and there's a unmount, of course.
And the elements, that's a like a DOM node, right?
Yes. So the way that Reach does this is effectively they'll create some like just some random state so that they can force re-render the component using like a set state function from like it's like effectively like the force refresh of component.
Yep.
But what ends up happening is 95% of the time it does the right thing, but the other 5% of the time it will jump to an element out of order.
Okay.
So I'm like completely confused, and I guess what it has something to do with is like potentially like the reconciler of the hooks is just not okay with force re-rendering. So instead of doing this return here, it just force re-renders. I don't, yeah. So
I'm trying to understand the code flow for that 5% of the time where it renders things out of order. So is it missing elements that need to be rendered, or is it just rendering them in the wrong order?
it's rendering them in the wrong order. So I actually have this.
And is this so let me make sure I get some more context here. So you discovered this when you were using one of the Reach UI packages, or did you fork this this hook and context stuff for your own thing?
Yeah, so initially I needed it because I'm building this UI component library that effectively it would be really nice if this worked correctly. But there were a couple of bugs that I noticed in Reach UI, and I was like, that's interesting. This doesn't have tests, so I'm gonna write a fairly complicated test. And so that's what I did.
Have you thought about like have you opened an issue on the Reach project?
I did. And Chance said that he'd take a look at it, but I don't remember seeing any activity yet.
Yeah, I know that Chance has been working hard on React Router v6 that's going out really soon. This is very exciting. I don't know if I'm announcing something, but yeah, it's coming out soon and I can't wait. But as soon as he's done with that, I'm pretty sure he's going back to Reach UI. So it may be a couple weeks before you hear back from him on that. But I bet if you were to make a PR that has a failing test, he would probably take a quick break and to look at it and give you some feedback on it. Because if there's like a legit bug that you can reproduce with a test, you'd probably, yeah, you'd get his attention a lot more. And so you said you already do have a test for this.
Yeah.
Pretty quick for you.
Yeah, the thing is like it's a fairly complicated test because it's hard to like make sense of, because it's kind of a very weird problem, I guess, because rendering is hard.
Yeah.
Effectively, it's like, here's a list of or here's like a random ordered list, and now render those elements, and then based off of those elements, I add like a index to then use React testing library, and as long as that index matches the text content, then I know that they've rendered correctly.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And so wait, this is, so you've got data index attributes that are added by reach. And
yes.
So you know what reach is, thinks the order is, but then the actual content differs from that. So what you're rendering is what you think the index should be, and then they have a different data index attribute.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
That I wouldn't say that test is super complicated. So yeah, I would say like put that into a test, put that in a PR, push it up. I'm not trying to brush you off or anything, but I really don't know how helpful I can be, since this is well, I have just a couple minutes left, and this I haven't worked in any of this code. Oh, it looks like it got closed.
Yeah.
Oh, he thinks he fixed it. Did you try his fix?
That's interesting. I didn't realize that he responded. It's been a minute.
And maybe you can look at his changes and see what he did.
Yeah.
And maybe if he didn't fix it, then you can do that pull request with the test to show him that it's not actually fixed yet.
Yep, that's true. All right. Well, that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Kent.
Sure thing, man. Okay, sweet. So let's see what else we have left for the next little bit. Okay, Wahid, you're here. Did you see my answer to your question? I answered a few minutes ago. You can scrub back on the video on YouTube to watch my answer. I think that's where we'll leave that. Okay, and so L, I think, or is that EI? I'm not sure if that's an I or an L, but yeah, read this post, but many times I get warnings from the components 2 levels deeper from the component I am testing, makes things complicated. There's also, you seem to have overlapping. Yeah, okay. So yeah, here's the big, and actually, was it Luis that asked the question about ACT? Yes. Yeah, so when I answered Luis's question, Wahid, then, or sorry, different question asker, L, sorry. When I answered Luis's question, then it should help to answer yours, but I'll just say, I'm just really trying to not go off on why Remix is so great. You don't have this problem with Remix. That's it. Because it is, when you're using Remix, it is very rare that you would ever have a component go get data when it's mounted. You pretty much always have the component, just it has its data. Remix gives it the data that it wants or that it needs. And so you never have like loading states or anything like that. And so the components that you're testing, and like, to be clear, you can have loading states and you can go get your data on mount, but you just don't ever need to or want to. And yeah, and so the components that you're testing, they just have the data. And so you never have a situation where you're like, well, okay, now I need to first wait for this data to load. Hold on a second. I just answered somebody's question about something very similar. Was it this one? Yeah, right here. So I would suggest looking at what I'm doing here. Check out what I am doing here. Because basically what I do is I say, here, we're going to render the page. We're going to wait for everything to finish getting like loading before we're continuing with the rest of the test. Now that can still be sort of a problem if like you finish loading, but then you click on something and that triggers something else to load. That is like outside of your test, you don't really care about it. So another way to solve this is you mock that component. Just mock it out to render null. The problem is that if you do that, you need to have another test that ensures that the integration is working properly. And so, but it can be a nice way to say, yeah, I do have a test that ensures it works properly, but I don't want all my other tests to have to worry about what that component's doing. So that is one idea of something that you can do is mock it out. That's probably what you want to do. Yeah, and overlapping act calls. Yeah. I'm not sure when that happens. That hasn't happened to me a lot. And when it has, I can't remember what I've done to sidestep it. So I'm sorry, I'm not sure what to tell you without having like a reproducible example to walk through. So if you want to create a reproducible example, then we can you can walk me through it next time. Okay, yeah, super bum deal about COVID and stuff. I agree. It's unlikely that the U.S. would lock out their own citizens, but it is an irrational fear. I admit it, but I have that fear just the same. Playing around with Remix, thought of building an app with it. Currently starting authentication stuff. Is there a guide? So actually, and I'm glad you're loving Remix, there is an authentication package, Remix Auth. I think it's what it's called. Yeah, Remix Auth by Sergio. So you can take a look at this. I do not use this. I roll it myself. But this has user password, OAuth2, and I thought that it had Auth0. Yeah, so it has Auth0 supported as well. And it basically is like Passport inspired, but rewritten to work on top of the Webfetch API. And it works really super great for Remix apps. So if you want to, give that a look. Sergio is awesome. And I'm glad that you really like Remix. It's awesome. Okay, Brandon's wondering, is there any difference between screen get by text and the const get by text equals render component? Yeah, so this one, yeah, actually, Brandon, you can do two. Ask this one as well, 2 separate recordings. That would be sweet. I could totally answer this one on the podcast thing. Cool. Thank you. And sweet. I think we're good. Anybody else in the Zoom have a question that they want to ask before we wrap up? Okay, sweet. I wasn't fast enough this morning to grab some breakfast, so I'm gonna go find some breakfast because I'm hungry. But thanks everybody for hanging out. This has been fun. And if you are interested in asking a question that you think could be asked and answered with audio only, then let me know and I will ping you in this private chat so that you can figure out how to ask it on the podcast thing. It's really cool and exciting, and it would be cool if you jump on and you're one of the first episodes. Yeah, all that said, I don't think that I forgot to take this off. This was not canceled today, clearly. And I should be back from my trip in Croatia next week. Yeah, I get back on Thursday. So I should be alive and well and awake, maybe jet lags, on Friday for office hours. So we'll see. So we'll see you next week, I guess. That's what I'm saying. Just took a long time to get there.